Denny Hamlin has won the Daytona 500 three separate times. He's won the Coca-Cola 600. He's won the Southern 500. 62 times across his career. He has parked a Cup car in victory lane. Enough to rank him inside the top 10 on the all-time wins list. Enough to be named one of NASCAR's 75 greatest drivers of all time. And yet, for 5 straight years, there was exactly one racetrack on the entire schedule that he simply could not win at. And it wasn't because he was slow there. He won the pole at that track twice. He once led more laps in a single race there than anybody else on the property, and still lost. Year after year, somehow, someone else drove off with the trophy, while Denny Hamlin went home with nothing. That track is Nashville Superspeedway. And last night, after half a decade of being denied, the curse finally broke. So today we're not just talking about a win. We're talking about the one glaring hole in a Hall of Fame resume. Why this specific track tormented one of the greatest drivers of his generation for 5 long years. And what it really means that he finally crossed it off the list. At 45 years old, on a night this sport will be talking about for a long time. Stay with me, because the way this curse finally ended is almost too perfect to be true. If you love the deeper NASCAR storylines, the history, the record, the stuff that runs underneath one Sunday afternoon, this is your channel, and hitting subscribe is the single thing that helps these stories keep finding you. Quick favor, then let's dig in. Because to understand why this win matters so much, you first have to understand just how absurd it was that he hadn't already done it. Let's be crystal clear about who we're talking about. Because the size of this drought only makes sense once you understand the size of the driver. Denny Hamlin is, by almost any honest measure, one of the greatest stock car racers of his entire era. 62 career Cup Series victories. That's 10th on the all-time list. Ahead of names with statues, ahead of champions, ahead of legends. He's won the biggest race in the sport, the Daytona 500. Not once, not twice, but 3 separate times. He's won the longest race in the sport, the Coca-Cola 600. He's won the Southern 500, NASCAR's oldest crown jewel, more than once. He owns more wins at Pocono Raceway than any driver in history. And he's tied for the most ever at Kansas. And his story runs deep. It goes all the way back to 2006, when he burst onto the scene as a rookie, and became the very first rookie in history to race his way into NASCAR's playoffs, on his way to Rookie of the Year honors. He's the winner of the closest Daytona 500 ever run. He's not just a driver either. He's an owner, co-founding and co-owning 23XI Racing alongside NBA legend Michael Jordan. In 2023, the sport made it official and named him one of its 75 greatest drivers of all time. This is not a man who struggles to win. This is not a man who shrinks in the big moments. He wins the races that define entire careers. So when you scan that resume and you land on one track, one ordinary stop on the calendar, where he had never, not one single time, finished first, it doesn't compute. It sticks out. It nags at you. And that track had a name. Nashville Superspeedway. At 1 1/3 miles, it's the longest concrete oval in all of NASCAR. The Cup Series returned there in 2021 after years away. And from the very first green flag, it quietly became Denny Hamlin's personal house of horrors. Just look at the list of winners across those first 5 years. 2021 Kyle Larson. 2022 Chase Elliott. 2023 Ross Chastain. 2024 Joey Logano. 2025 Ryan Blaney. 5 races, 5 different winners. And not a single one of them was named Denny Hamlin. Now here's the part that turns ordinary frustration into a genuine curse. It's not that Hamlin was bad at Nashville. He was often one of the fastest cars in the building. He started from the pole there in 2022. He won the pole again in 2024. And in that 2022 race, he didn't just run up front. He led 114 laps, more than anyone else in the field. He flat out dominated huge stretches of that race. And Chase Elliott still drove off with the trophy. Picture that. Picture being the fastest car, starting from the front, leading more laps than anybody, and then standing there watching someone else spray the champagne. Not once, year after year after year. That's not bad luck. That's a jinx. A concrete jinx. Sitting right in the middle of an otherwise spotless hall of fame, resume like a stain he could not scrub out. And here's the thing. Every truly great driver has a track like this. Bogey track. A place that, for reasons nobody can fully explain, just refuses to cooperate, no matter how much talent you throw at it. For some legends, it's a road course. For some, it's a short track. For Denny Hamlin, was a slab of abrasive concrete in Lebanon, Tennessee. And Nashville is a uniquely punishing place to carry a streak like that. As the longest concrete oval in the sport, it does things to a race car that asphalt simply doesn't. The surface chews up tires. The grip changes constantly as the night goes on. Track position becomes everything, because passing is genuinely difficult, and one mistake in traffic can undo an entire night's work. It's a track that rewards patience and punishes the smallest error. And it had punished Hamlin 5 years running. There's history in that name, too. Stock cars raced at the old Nashville Fairgrounds for decades, all the way back to the late 1950s. So when the modern Cup Series came to Nashville Superspeedway, it wasn't just another race. It carried real weight, real heritage. Winning there means something. And for 5 years, it meant something Denny Hamlin couldn't have. And if you want to understand why this particular drought got so deep under his skin, you have to zoom all the way out. Because Nashville isn't the only prize that slipped through Denny Hamlin's fingers. It's the small echo of the single biggest almost of his entire career. Denny Hamlin has never won a NASCAR Cup Series championship. Sit with that for a moment. One of the 10 winningest drivers in the history of the sport. 3 Daytona 500 trophies, and not one championship to his name. It's not for lack of getting close. He finished runner-up for the title back in 2010, in a championship fight that came down to the very end of the season against the great Jimmy Johnson. And he came up just short. And then, 15 years later, in 2025, after all the wins, all the experience, all the heartbreak in between, he did it again. Runner-up for the championship one more time. Twice the bridesmaid, decades apart, the same empty feeling both times. So this is the shadow Denny Hamlin races under. For all his greatness, he's become the brilliant driver defined, fairly or not, the things that got away. The championship, and one stubborn concrete oval in Tennessee, which is exactly why what happened on Sunday night meant so much more than just another win on the board. So how did it finally end? The most Denny Hamlin way imaginable, by very nearly throwing it away first. He rolled into the Cracker Barrel 400, starting on the pole. Perfect setup, the best possible shot at finally breaking through. And then on the very first lap of the race, he jumped the start, got on the gas before he was allowed to. And NASCAR officials hit him with a pass-through penalty that dropped him all the way to dead last in the 38-car field. For one sinking moment, it looked like the Nashville curse was simply writing its 6th straight chapter. Same story, different year. But this time the ending was different. Hamlin put his head down and methodically clawed his way back through the entire field over 300 grueling laps. And when a late caution set up a 4-lap sprint to the checkered flag, he found himself 3 wide on the final lap. Not against strangers, but against his own Joe Gibbs racing teammates. He threaded the needle, cleared them through the corner, and dragged his car to the line by a margin of 115 thousandths of a second. The man who could never win at Nashville finally won at Nashville, and he did it the hardest possible way. From the back against his own teammates, by barely more than a car length. We broke that entire drive down lap by lap in another video on this channel, and trust me, it's worth your time. But for today's story, all that matters is the result. The curse is dead, and the details surrounding that win only make it sweeter. It wasn't just a Hamlin victory. It was a clean sweep for Joe Gibbs Racing, a 1-2-3 finish, with teammates Christopher Bell and Chase Briscoe completing the podium right behind him. On top of that, his win finally delivered something the manufacturer had been chasing for years. It was Toyota's very first Cup Series victory at Nashville Superspeedway. 5 years of trying, and Toyota had never won there either, until Hamlin did it. It was the 62nd win of his storied career. And afterward, describing that frantic final corner, Hamlin explained that his own teammates, Bell and Brisk, were battling each other so hard going into turn 1 that it cracked the door open just enough for him to dive to the inside and make the move. Think about that. The very teammates trying to beat him were the ones who let him through. Even the way this curse finally broke had a little bit of poetry to it. But there was something else hanging over this victory. Something that gave it a weight that had nothing to do with curses or records at all. Step back and take in the full picture. Denny Hamlin is 45 years old, deep into his 3rd decade of Cup racing. He came into this season sitting second in the championship standings, once again right in the thick of the title fight, once again chasing the one prize that's eluded him his entire life. And in the very middle of that chase, he walked into the one track that had owned him for 5 straight years, and he finally conquered it. That is not the move of a driver winding down. That's a statement. Up in the broadcast booth, Hall of Famer Mark Martin watched that drive and called it the best version of Denny Hamlin he has ever seen. When you knock the one stubborn track off your list at 45 years old, while running second in the championship, the message to the rest of the garage is loud and impossible to miss. This guy is not fading. If anything, he's getting sharper. Hamlin personally, you can only imagine the release. 5 years of leading laps, starting up front, and watching other people celebrate at Nashville. Gone wiped clean in one perfect chaotic night. One of the last great almosts of his career. Finally turned into a did it. The championship is still out there. Still unfinished business. But Nashville belongs to him now, and nobody can ever take that away. But here's what makes this win more than a feel-good milestone. It lands right in the middle of a championship chase, and that changes everything about what it's actually worth. Because remember the bigger ghost. The one Denny Hamlin has been chasing his entire career and still hasn't caught. The title. And right now, in 2026, that chase is wide open and very much alive. Hamlin came into Nash sitting second in the standings, trailing the runaway story of the season, who has stacked up multiple wins and built himself a commanding points lead. Reddick has been the man to beat all year long. Hamlin has been the steady veteran lurking right behind him, refusing to go away. So this Nashville win isn't just symbolic. It's a real, tangible blow struck in a live title fight. It's a points day banked. It's a confidence day earned. And it's a message fired off to every other team in that garage. Denny Hamlin can now win anywhere. Even at the one place on earth he couldn't win for 5 straight years. When you take a driver's bogey track away from him, you don't just hand him a trophy. You hand him belief. And belief, this late in a career, with the championship still sitting on the table, is a genuinely dangerous thing. Think about the symmetry of it for a second. Hamlin has spent 2 decades chasing 2 ghosts. Nashville, the track that always said no, and the championship, the prize that always slipped away in the final reckoning. On Sunday night, he finally caught one of them. He stared down a 5-year curse, did it the hardest way imaginable, and dragged it across the line by 115 thousandths of a second. And that raises the only question that really matters now. The one every NASCAR fan should be asking as the season turns toward its second half and the playoffs come into view. If a 45-year-old can finally exercise a curse this stubborn, from dead last, against his own teammates, with the whole sport watching, then what exactly does that say about his odds against the bigger ghosts still waiting out there? Because the man who couldn't win at Nashville just did, and the man who has never won a championship is still very much in the hunt. After a night like this one, you'd be a brave soul to bet against him. And I have to mention the weight that hung over this entire weekend. Because it's impossible to pull apart from this win. The whole NASCAR garage was in mourning, grieving the recent and sudden loss of one of its greatest figures. This victory didn't happen in a vacuum. It happened inside that grief. And what Denny Hamlin chose to do in the seconds right after he climbed from his car, in honor of the man the sport had just lost, became a moment that stopped people cold. But that's a story that deserves its own telling, and I won't rush it here. So here's what I want from you down in the comments. Tell me which current driver has the most surprising hole left on their resume. The big track, the big race, that a great driver somehow has never won. Hamlin just erased his. Who's next in line? Let's hear your picks below. If you want the full lap-by-lap story of how he actually pulled this off, the charge from dead last, the three-wide final lap against his own teammates. I broke that entire drive down in a separate video that's right here on the channel. Go watch that one next. And if you want the emotional side of this night, the quiet tribute Hamlin paid in victory lane that left the whole sport in tears, that one is waiting for you too. For 5 long years, Nashville owned Denny Hamlin. Last night he finally owned it right back. Some curses don't break quietly.